Let's just be honest here. It's very hard not to be excited about New Orleans Saints wide receiver Rashid Shaheed, so let's be excited about New Orleans Saints wide receiver Rashid Shaheed. We got all that and a little bit of lanyard for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? Welcome into today's episode of Locked On Saints, your daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much as always, making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget you can subscribe and follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can always continue the conversation with me one-on-one over at joinsubtext.com/lockedonsaints. As always, I'm your host, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter, your New Orleans Saints expert, credential member of the media, senior writer and reporter over at Saints News Network, Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation site, covering the New Orleans Saints. You can find me every Tuesday on the Locked On NFL podcast and here with you every single Monday through Friday and then some on Locked On Saints. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, it is OTA Week 2. Yes, we got the opportunity, media, to be at Saints OTAs today. So let's get through some of the biggest notes. We'll take a look at attendance because it did fall a little bit, but the leaders did not. So we'll get to that. We're also going to take a look at Kirk, Merritt, and Alontae Taylor. Could they be undergoing some position changes or just getting work at new positions? But first, New Orleans Saints wide receiver Rashid Shaheed underwent a number change this offseason. Number 22 is now what he's wearing, but whether he's in 89 or he's in 22, the big plays just keep coming. There's absolutely no stopping Rashid Shaheed when it comes to being a showstopper. Shaheed, the showstopper, is what I'll be calling him from now on. Let's talk about why and why he's also not alone. Appreciate everybody for being here for another live episode of Locked On Saints. Kathleen, Brooke, Pammy, I see you. Mark777, Nick, Hoodie Jube is in the building. D is in the building. Jerry's in the building. J-Rose out here. I appreciate y'all very much for being here, whether you're catching the show live or you're catching the show later. Thank you very much, as always, for continuing to show support and show love. So let's get rolling on today's episode around what it is that we saw at OTA Day 2. There were a couple, or not Day 2, Day 2 for media, week 2 for the team, but practice number 4 in terms of OTAs. They were there Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday last week. They'll be there Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday again this week. So this week was a little bit different than last week. That we were expecting to be outside, but then the lightning sirens went off, so we needed to go into the indoor facility. That, I think, led to us not being able to see as much when it came to team drills. We definitely didn't get to see as much when it came to team drills, but I'll tell you, I slowed down and I watched and tried to catch as much as I was getting on out the building. Not enough to, inconvenience anybody or anything like that, but I got to tell you, the number and the name that continued to pop up all throughout OTA practice for week 2 for the Saints today was, of course, number 22, Rashid Shaheed. Rashid Shaheed is 100% the playmaker that the New Orleans Saints need over on the offensive side. Run after catch, he's got it. His ability to separate, he's got it. Top end speed to create natural separation by simply running away from defenders, he's got it. But he's also now showing you that he's becoming more nuanced in route running. His ability to push upfield comes naturally because he is such a vertical threat that DBs are going to buy in to his ability to sell that vertical route. And then when he gets to the top of that stem and then has to make, his breaks and things like that, he's showing you that he can do that clearly, concisely. He can do that crisp, with crisp, with detail, all of the other things. So he's able to find his way to be able to create all of those little nuances that you need to be a wide receiver that creates separation in and out of his breaks. And so you're seeing that, but you're also seeing his ability with his hands. I have not seen Rashid Shaheed put a ball on the ground so far during OTAs, despite the fact that he's gotten a ton of attention. In fact, today, he was running a crossing route over the middle of the field. Derek Carr put one out a little bit too far ahead of him. What does Rashid Shaheed do? Does he let that thing fall to the ground? Nope. He just sticks his arm out and then grabs it with one hand, reels it in, and keeps running. That was during 7-on-7 drills. So you're loving seeing what you're seeing from Rashid Shaheed so far. One of the plays that we did get to see from team drills as media was working their way out of the indoor facility was a big throw from Derek Carr to Rashid Shaheed that either at least would have gotten them into the red zone, if not allowed Rashid Shaheed to get to the end zone. It was a deep pass, but also allowed him to be able to make a catch and then pick up some yards after catch as well, which is the big thing that the Saints don't necessarily have as a ready or as a readily available threat in their offense. Guys like Michael Thomas and Chris Olave are both yards before catch type guys, though I don't want to discount either of their abilities to pick up yards after catch, but yards after catch is the name of the game for Rashid Shaheed. Put the ball in his hands, and what does he do? He becomes a returner, and that becomes a big part of what it is. I want to share a quick little just personality thing for you as well. Spoke with Rashid Shaheed after practice today. The reason that he made the change to the number 89 to the number 22 was for his father. It was the number that his dad wore. I believe he said it was during high school when he ran track. It was his dad's number. It's his dad's favorite number, all the other stuff. And Rashid Shaheed looked me in the eyes and said, I've always wanted to be like my dad. So when 22 became available, it was an easy choice. Pretty cool little tidbit there. But Rashid Shaheed's not alone as a playmaker. The New Orleans Saints also have Chris Olave, who still continues to make plays as well. We watched him come to, show up at practice today and come up with a couple of big catches. We consistently see his ability to separate, his ability to be able to create cushion, work his way open, find different spaces open in the zone, which, by the way, is also what Rashid Shaheed did on that deep pass during team drills. The reason why he was open wasn't just because he can create separation in man coverage and tight coverage situations, but it's also because of the fact that he can find his way open in zone, something you want to see A.T. Perry taking a step ahead as well, who also made a couple of nice catches today, but didn't have the day that he has had over the course of the past couple of viewing moments when it came to him. Pass behind him, thrown by Jameis Winston that he wasn't going to be able to bring in, ended up with a couple of other targets that he wasn't able to bring down, not because of drops or anything like that, but because DBs were in position and making plays. It was a good day for the DBs today, but the wide receivers continued to find ways to stand out. Chris Olave, by the way, we mentioned that one of the things that we wanted to track going into OTAs was how is the bulking up going. He said it was a big goal of his. He played last season at 187, only came down with 33% of those contested catches, 8 of 24 last year per Pro Football Focus's scouting, or I guess tracking is really the right way to say it. But now I spoke to him after practice and I asked how it's going for him. He said it's going well. He's up to 192 pounds now, so a 5-pound difference from last year to this year, which might not sound like a lot, but his body distribution and everything like that, you can tell, you can see it. So he is looking bigger, he's looking more muscular, all of those other things, which should allow him to be able to continue to fight through the contact, continue to fight through tight coverage and things like that, and hopefully be able to improve a little bit in that contested catch game, which was a big focus for him over the course of the offseason. We saw it last week with his ability to go up and make a big catch over the top of Marcus May. So it was a great thing to be able to see when it comes to Chris Olave. So the Saints still have these two big-time playmakers. And look, A.T. Perry's still making catches. Malik Flowers is out there making catches, though he did get a ball punched out, a fumble caused there. We're seeing guys like Bryan Edwards with the big catch and run as well. So we're seeing them make plays all over the field right now when it comes to the passing game. And I'm not leaving out, guys like Juwan Johnson and Foster Moreau and Lucas Kroll, who all also had good showings today. But I just want to highlight the guys that were the showstoppers. And in particular, showstopper Shaheed was out there getting it all done all over again. So I love what you're seeing from the Saints skill position players. That's been the focus this offseason, bringing in those skill position players to complement the new quarterback in Derek Carr. And so far, so good when it comes to that equation. Coming up next is another wide receiver out there who's making news, but it's because of a new place where he's getting snaps. Kirk Merritt getting more run at running back, and this year looks like it might be closer to a permanent potential position change as opposed to last year when he returned back to wide receiver. And we also saw some snaps for Alontae Taylor in the slot. Could these be big-time position changes, or Are they just getting those looks in during OTAs? Let's break it all down as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by Built Bar, the best tasty protein bar on the market. Go ahead, name every protein bar that you tried. You know what I'm going to tell you? Built Bar is better. Built Bar is better. It's better than that one. Better than that one. Yep, better than that one too. You're not going to find a better protein bar out on the market than Built Bar. Listen to some of these flavors. Cherry Barcia. It's like that favorite ice cream that you like, but even better. It's got the cherry flavor, and every single bar is covered in 100% dark chocolate, including salted caramel, cookies and cream, mint brownie, peanut butter brownie, all that. And you might be thinking to yourself, Ross, it sounds like a ton of sugar. Don't worry, 4 or 5 grams of sugar, even though you're getting them 17, 18 grams of protein. So go check them out today at built.com. You'd also find 4-bar boxes in the pharmacy section at Walmart, and over at Sam's Club, you can get a 13-bar box of some great flavors like Churro Puff as well as Brownie Batter Puff as well. So go and check them out today, Walmart, Sam's Club, and of course, built.com. All right, family, continuing on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. Appreciate you as always making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day, every day. To all the everydayers out there, I see you. Let me see them everydayers in chat. Let me see them locked. Let me see that your team every day in the chat. For those of y'all that are hanging out with us live, appreciate you very much for being here one way or another, though, as always. I want to take a look at some position changes, for Kirk Merritt, New Orleans Saints wide receiver, as well as Alontae Taylor, the guy that was super impressive last year as an outside corner. Let's start off with the guy that I see you, Nate Lyon. I appreciate you, homie. Let's start off with Kirk Merritt, because Kirk Merritt, I think, is the position change that could potentially be permanent. Whew. A lot of P words in these sentences. So Kirk Merritt, and this isn't new for Kirk Merritt, right? Kirk Merritt did this last year during training camp, got some run at running back, changed his number to 33, had nothing to do with the running back position. However, returned back to the wide receiver position, was on the practice squad as a wideout. I see y'all. On the Saints official website, he's still listed at wide receiver, but I spoke one-on-one with Joel Thomas today, running backs coach for the New Orleans Saints. I'm going to bring you some of the information all throughout the week in terms of what he and I's conversation was. We spoke about guys like Kendre Miller. Yes, we also spoke about Tajay Spears. I'll bring that to you later on this week. And, of course, what he's seeing from guys like Jamal Williams and others. But one of the big highlights that he and I discussed was Kirk Merritt, who has been spending time with the running backs so far in both of the OTA sessions that we've seen. Now, bear in mind, Alvin Kamara has not been present, and in both Kendre Miller as well as Eno Benjamin have been present but not participating actively or fully in drills. They've been working off to the side. That was true for them today as well. We'll look at a little bit more of that once we get deeper into attendance. So when I looked at Kirk Merritt getting those running back opportunities, I thought it might have just been because the Saints were down 3 running backs. But if you think about it, they still have a lot of guys. They've got Ellis Merriweather. They've got SaRodorick Thompson. Both of those guys undrafted free agents. They also have Jamal Williams, of course. And then now, of course, they're working with Kirk Merritt. So there's enough there for them to be able to work with some of these other guys. But I do think that there's a real chance here that Kirk Merritt could potentially be looking at a position change. When I spoke with Joel Thomas, he said specifically, he's been with me all offseason and throughout OTAs. So Kirk Merritt isn't just playing running back because the numbers are low at the position so far during OTAs. All throughout the offseason so far, which this team works even when we don't see them working, Kirk Merritt has apparently, according to Joel Thomas, been working as a running back. And one of the things that Joel Thomas mentioned was that he's getting the nuances down, stance, lining up, all of the little things that it takes to be able to excel at a new position. So it does sound like there might be more of a permanent shift for Kirk Merritt. Now, I want to break down a really important thing when it comes to Kirk Merritt's potential future at this position. Because let's just say that the Saints decide to keep 4 running backs. So you've got guys that are already there. You've got Alvin Kamara, you've got Jamal Williams, you've got Eno Benjamin, and of course you've got Kendre Miller. That seems to be sort of what you can write in pencil when it comes to the Saints running back room. But there could be a little bit of a position battle that's going on if a guy like Ellis Merriweather or if a guy like SaRodorick Thompson doesn't impress enough, which this next week's going to be really important for them too, but this next week's going to be very important for a guy like Kirk Merritt as well. It could come down to a battle between Benjamin and Kirk Merritt for that fourth running back spot if things get really interesting over the course of the offseason. If nothing else, there's a chance that Kirk Merritt makes it back to the practice squad. And if you think about it, that's a smart decision by the Saints. If things pan out with Kirk Merritt as a running back, if you keep him on the practice squad, he can potentially come in and help you at running back. He can also potentially come in and help you at wide receiver. So it's one practice squad spot that helps you in two different positions as a practice squad elevation, as a game day elevation, whatever it might be. So there's a good shot there for a guy like Kirk Merritt. Now, why do I keep saying that this next week is going to be very important? According to Joel Thomas, over the course of next week, the Saints are going to be installing a little bit more and expanding a little bit more in their third down packages. That means more pass catching for these running backs. So for guys like Ellis Merriweather and SaRodorick Thompson, it's in their best interest to show what they can do quickly as pass catchers. But for a guy like Kirk Merritt, who is a natural pass catcher and being a career wide receiver so far up to this point, it's a real opportunity for him to separate himself. And while that's happening, if Benjamin can't get back out on the field, then that gives him a little bit of a leg up in terms of early impressions before training camp gets underway. So watch out for Kirk Merritt over the course of this next week to potentially look to start separating himself from some of the other younger running backs that are in that room. Now, let's take a look at the other potential position change, which comes down to Alontae Taylor. Now, this one isn't as dramatic, right? I said position changes, question mark. And the reason why I said the question mark is because the question that you want to ask is, are these permanent? Or is it just getting a look at some of these players and giving them an opportunity to cross-train? I think the former applied more to Kirk Merritt. Could potentially be a permanent position change. But when it comes to Alontae Taylor, this might just be more about getting him some opportunities and getting him some experience in cross-training in the slot. When we spoke to him after practice, he was pretty precise and it seemed pretty intent in expressing that, yes, he's getting opportunities in the nickel, but he is still very much an outside corner. That's where he wants to be. That's where he wants to compete. So this could be very akin to what we saw from Paulson Adebo early on in his career, which is where the Saints started kind of cross-training him in the slot. But ultimately, he ended up still playing on the outside. So we may never, ever see Alontae Taylor take a full game snap at or in the slot or as a starter in the slot. That's not likely to become his new position. He is still very much dedicated to being an outside corner. But if he impresses and he falls in love with what's there, then maybe the story begins to change. He did say that there are some things to like there, but he's still having to learn. He's still making mistakes and things like that. Those are all going to get better over time. But for Alontae Taylor's money, he's probably still going to be an outside corner, but it is cool to see them getting him involved. I do have a Smoke Monday update for you here before we wrap it up. I spoke with Smoke Monday afterwards. I am very happy to say that per sources, Smoke Monday had a smoothie after practice today. So that's my big update for you. No, I'm just kidding. But I should start just giving you like these really innocuous Smoke Monday updates just for fun. I might do that. That's what will make Smoke Mondays. But I will tell you that Smoke said that he is being used everywhere on the New Orleans Saints defense. In the slot, down in the box, deep, splitting safeties, deep safeties, all those other things. So a little bit more versatility, continued versatility that is being shown by this New Orleans Saints defense. And the reason why I want to highlight that before we get to attendance here is because Marcus Robertson, the New Orleans Saints' new defensive backs coach, when I asked Dennis Allen about Marcus Robinson a couple of weeks ago, the thing that he mentioned was that he was integral when it came to Charles Woodson making that transition from corner to safety. And he has had a long time track record with the success of versatile defensive backs. Now think about it. You bring in you've already got Dennis Allen, who was really good with all the versatility and moving players around on the defensive side, of course. You add Marcus Robertson to that mix, but then you also add Ugo Amadi, who plays several positions. Jonathan Abram plays several positions. Lonnie Johnson Jr. plays several positions. Smoke Monday plays several positions. You're watching Alontae Taylor cross-train. Troy Pride Jr. playing in a couple of different spots. He had an interception today, by the way, on a pass thrown to Juwan Johnson down the right sideline by Derek Carr. Fantastic play by Troy Pride. So I want to highlight that you're seeing Smoke Monday be used all over the place, and you're also seeing the versatility of the New Orleans Saints defense continue to be a focus. And of course, the Saints knew that was going to be the case, especially with the addition of Marcus Robinson on the coaching staff. Okay, coming up next, let's get to attendance. Who was there, who wasn't? Things changed for the New Orleans Saints. Attendance dipped, but leaders absolutely did not. We got that coming up for you as we continue on to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Saints here live on the Locked On Saints YouTube channel. Appreciate you very much if you're here live or if you're catching the show later. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. All right, so let's talk attendance here. So the New Orleans Saints got to a point here to where they had this really impressive showing at the beginning of OTAs with like 90% of their roster being present. I'm doing some quick math right quick. Today, attendance dipped a little bit when it came to the Saints. Instead of having 10 players not present, they had 15 players not 14 players. Let me say 14 players not present. You had a bunch of other players that weren't participating: Cesar Ruiz, Kendre Miller, Eno Benjamin, Nick Saldiveri, but we did see Nick Saldiveri. So this is where I want to start before I don't want to like run down the list of all the players, but let's just get to the key moments. One of the key things for you to know is that Nick Saldiveri was at the Saints facility today on the bike in the indoor training facility, getting some work in. He was doing, ropes and things like that. When I think about the ropes, I always think about that Serena Williams commercial. That's the first thing I always think about. But he was in there doing all that. He was on the row machine. He was on the bike, all that other stuff. So you saw him getting some of that work in. So it was good to see that he's there and working with the training staff. So the Saints went from having about 90% attendance to about 83% attendance this week. We saw some new faces not present. Bradley Roby, Lonnie Johnson Jr., and a couple of others. But we also saw some new players that came back for practice this week, including 2 players. And 2 of them are leaders. So we saw Demario Davis back in action. He also spoke with media afterwards, gave some phenomenal stuff in terms of, his thoughts on adversity for the, adversity, and how important it is, how faith plays a role in his game, all of that. So just really, really cool to see that. And he was out on the field. So he and Pete Werner reestablished themselves as the starters at the linebacker position. The thing to keep in mind here, though, is that when Demario Davis came off the field, and this is something we spoke about in this morning's episode, early this morning on Tuesday, DeMarco Jackson was the guy that came in and took his spot. So he lined up next to Pete Werner. So this confirms what we suspected last week, at least for now, that Zach Bond has been finding his way onto the field as the third linebacker on the strong side. But when you talk about the third coverage linebacker, the third off-ball linebacker, the guy right behind Demario Davis and Pete Werner, it has been DeMarco Jackson. So it's very, very clear that the Saints are feeling good about what they're seeing in DeMarco Jackson and how dedicated he must have been all throughout the offseason. We're going to dig for more information on that next week. We'll definitely come back to it. I'll also continue to dig a little bit as best as I can over the course of this week as well. So really good news for the Saints when it comes to that linebacker spot. JT Gray was also back. JT Gray, I do consider a leader on this team. He's somebody that's going to be a special teams captain more than likely this year, all of that. So, he's back on another deal, everything. He's a guy that a lot of folks on the roster look up to, so I do very much consider him a leader. So it was great to see him back out on the field. Tyrann Mathieu was not here today, so that did mean that Marcus May and JT Gray took the safety snaps at safety in terms of splitting the field. We did have a few folks that continued to miss practices, and all that I mean by continued to miss, quote unquote, is simply that they missed last week and then they also missed the Tuesday this week. But do keep in mind that just because they missed today doesn't mean that they're not back around Wednesday and Thursday, or that they weren't here last Wednesday and Thursday. This is just what we as media have the opportunity to see. So guys like Taysom Hill, Michael Thomas, Marshawn Lattimore, Alvin Kamara, Ryan Ramczyk, Andrus Peat, James Hurst, they all still missed. So they missed last week and they missed this week. New absences this week were wide receiver Traquan Smith, nickel corner Bradley Roby, which could be a part of why Alontae Taylor got those opportunities in the slot. But if you listen and you head over to New Orleans Football, which I greatly recommend. There was a conversation with Alontae Taylor, and I'm pretty sure they talked about him getting looks in the slot no matter what in that interview. And that's certainly what we thought we were going to see this week anyway. But not having Bradley Roby there was definitely a big part of, him getting those increased opportunities. He did say that Bradley Roby's been a fantastic resource for him as he did that, by the way. A couple of other guys that were new on the absence list: Lonnie Johnson Jr., Paulson Adebo, and Tyrann Mathieu, who we mentioned earlier. But remember, Tyrann Mathieu was there. Wide receiver James Hurst and defensive tackle Nathan Shepard were both gone. Now, one of the things that we wanted to see was whether or not Bryan Bresee got into second, first team kind of drills, got those opportunities and stuff like that. And we didn't see that so much this week, unfortunately. But maybe there will be more opportunities down the road. The guy that started at defensive tackle next to Colin Saunders today was Malcolm Roach, who is back on his new deal with the New Orleans Saints. So that is our look at attendance. One of the reasons why I mentioned that attendance may have fallen, but leadership hasn't, is because even though Tyrann Mathieu wasn't here today, Demario Davis was. Even though Marshawn Lattimore still wasn't here, and you saw Paulson Adebo out and all that, guys like JT Gray absolutely were. And you're seeing new leaders as well. So I want to wrap up today's episode with this. I spoke with Keith Kirkwood after practice, and Keith Kirkwood's a guy that gets a lot of sweat and stuff like that. And I get it. I understand. But I cannot tell you just how phenomenally mature and understanding and excited Keith Kirkwood is about being a mentor for some of the young guys. And this is the thing that I think has always been so special about the New Orleans Saints locker room and about the New Orleans Saints. We spoke with Alontae Taylor today, and he mentioned that Dennis Allen tells them all the time, I want the handshakes, I want the dap, I want the swag, I want the trash talk. You can hear Demario Davis out yap, 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 yap the entire time. It's awesome. And all the other linebackers get in on it. The DBs are dapping each other up, high-fiving, dancing, all this other stuff. That swagger is getting back there on the Saints defense. It's only, look, we're 2 practices so far in terms of what we've seen. So these things are going to continue to build. And I can't wait for training camp when there's fans there and everything during training camp. They're going to talk their stuff, all that other stuff. So in my conversation with Keith Kirkwood, here's basically one of the things that he said to me that I thought was massively impressive. And what he said to me was, look, I might not be on the active roster. I might be a practice squad guy, but the thing that I am looking forward to so much is being a mentor for some of these young guys. 6 years, he told me. He said it had gone by in the blink of an eye. 6 years he's been in the NFL now, or maybe this is his 6th year, but it's just something that he clearly loves and clearly appreciates. And that kind of attitude is, can I say contagious? Permeates throughout the locker room. And so I wanted to highlight that because I just thought that was such a special interaction that I was able to have with him, to where you just saw this guy who is just mad happy to be in the building. And that is the energy that a guy like Quez used to have. Marquez Callaway, who's now in Denver right now, that's the energy that Quez had. And so to see that energy just kind of transfer to another guy in the locker room, alive and well, really, really good. I might have just hit a button on my soundboard if y'all heard something weird. Sorry about that. I think I have the volume down, but who knows? All right. So I just wanted to highlight all that. So again, attendance was down, but leadership, swagger, anticipation, all that other stuff, the excitement absolutely was not down at all. And it goes everywhere from Rashid Shaheed making big old plays, Chris Olave making big old plays, Alontae Taylor being a dog in the slot, Demario Davis talking his trash, to Keith Kirkwood wanting to be a leader, Tano Passanio talking about leadership, all this other stuff. So really, really cool stuff for this New Orleans Saints offense. For this New Orleans Saints OTAs, off-season workouts thus far. So I'm seeing a lot of great comments in the chat. I just want y'all to know that I see you and everything. I try to make sure that I get all of this information to you first and all that. So if you have any questions, go ahead and drop in the chat. I'm seeing all the kind words. You know I love you. You know I love you. So thank you so much for being here for another episode. Do make sure you get your questions in the chat so I can come back to them all throughout the week. So please, please, please don't forget to drop those in there. That's it. I just think you're great. I just think you're awesome. And I'm super glad to be here with you. All right. Coming up for Tomorrow's episode, we're going to dive in a little bit deeper in terms of some of the things that we saw throughout training camp. We'll go through kind of where players lined up. We'll get to some of your questions, and I'll share a little bit more of some of my conversations with the guys. But I think like one of the big things that stood out to me was my conversation with Alontae Taylor and the challenges that come with shifting from corner to nickel. So we'll break some of that down in tomorrow's episode as well. Appreciate you as always, y'all, for making me a part of your day, a part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. As always, if you see me, please say hi. I want to give a big shout out to the homie Tavis as well, who I saw during Bayou Boogaloo. Been meaning to get this shout out for a while. My apologies, homie, on the delay. But I want to give a shout out to Tavis, who said that he's locked on everything. He listens to a bunch of Locked On shows. So if you listen to other Locked On shows, let me know, because I would love to tell the homies that, like, hey, we got some folks, we got some overlap and everything like that. Hey, as always, if you want to keep the conversation going with me one-on-one, head over to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSaints today. And of course, if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how you're momming them. And trust you, that nation, I'll holla at you.